Illinois asking the U.S. Supreme Court to take the case challenging the use of the National Guard for public safety. Good morning. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning here for the Center Square. I'm the editor. My team and I, we bring you the latest, and we've got some of the ongoing back and forth about whether or not President Donald Trump can use the National Guard for public safety. So let's go ahead and get on into it. Be sure to get to the website, thecentersquare.com, where you can sign up for the newsletter each and every weekday morning. And you might notice a little different space than what we typically have at the home office. I'm on the road, making sure that we've got an alternate way to get the show out to you after yesterday, some AWS problems, messing some stuff up. And some people already noticing in the live chat. Yes, some new music. It's stuff I've had in the past. I just didn't use it here for Illinois in Focus. But as I'm remote, I had some access to my tunes and pulled in some new music, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that. But let's get into it, all right? So go to the website, thecentersquare.com, click on Illinois, and you'll be able to see the latest headline. Illinois asks Supreme Court not to give authority over to National Guard. To give Trump authority over the National Guard. So let's go ahead and read this. All right, the state of Illinois asked the U.S. Supreme Court not to hear President Donald Trump's request to deploy the National Guard in Chicago amid disagreement about plans for immigration enforcement in the state's most populous city. Top attorneys for Illinois and Chicago said that Trump has overstepped his authority. They were joined by officials from Los Angeles, California, and elsewhere in the legal fight over who controls troops. Now, here's a quote from the Attorney General's office from Illinois saying that the court should decline applicants' request to unsettle the equitable judgments reflected in the Seventh Circuit's order and to take the dramatic step of permitting deployment of National Guard troops over Illinois' objections for the handful of days the temporary restraining order currently remains in effect. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul's legal team wrote in a legal filing. Now, what's interesting here is, give us some background. So you've got the president having talked for weeks about wanting to get the National Guard into Chicago, saying he's going to save Chicago, make Chicago safe again. And Governor J.B. Pritzker pushed back. You had Democrats essentially saying that Trump was being an authoritarian and he was going to use the military. Even the governor saying that he's not a conspiracy theorist, but he believes that Trump wants to use the military to influence the 2026 election. But you had the president use the National Guard over in Los Angeles whenever there were protests that turned violent against immigration enforcement. That was challenged in the courts. And then you had the president use the National Guard in Oregon, and that was challenged in the courts. And then you had the president working with local officials in Memphis to have the National Guard. All of this while the president had previously used the National Guard in Washington, D.C., and I believe still is, to clean up public safety in the nation's capital. Now, the president has that authority, though it's limited for the nation's capital. The arguments are that the president does not have the authority to use the National Guard for public safety. But if you look at the orders from the U.S. Northern Command about the deployment of troops in Illinois, it was to protect federal agencies and federal personnel and their equipment and their property and their persons, because you've seen that some of the things can get chaotic whenever ICE is on the ground performing immigration enforcement. And again, in Illinois, you have federal officials saying they have to flood the zone because of the state's migrant sanctuary policies. So let's go back over to the article that Brett Rowland from the Center Square put together. The state and other challenged Trump's authority to deploy the National Guard to cities over objections of local leaders. Illinois officials said that federal authorities aren't needed. Applicants' contrary arguments rest on mischaracterizations of the factual record of the lower court's views of the legal principle, the state said in its response. As the district court found, state and local law enforcement officers have handled isolated protest activities in Illinois, and there's no credible evidence to the contrary. Now, on the side of the Trump administration, America First Policy Institute, a nonprofit group, said that Trump should control the orders over the National Guard. They said plaintiffs have asserted 9 claims, each of which is a variation of the same underlying request for the federal courts to second-guess the president's determination that the conditions for federalizing the National Guard have been satisfied here. Attorneys for the group wrote, "There is no express private cause of action to bring these claims, and for nearly 200 years this court has recognized that the president's determination is non-justiciable." Filings in the Illinois case came the same day that a 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit overturned a temporary restraining order issued by a federal judge in Portland, Oregon, removing a judicial obstruction that prevented Trump from sending Oregon National Guard troops to Portland. The ruling comes in the wake of Trump deploying National Guard troops to U.S. cities, including Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Portland, Memphis, and Chicago to protect the work of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents. Agents have been attacked, hampered by agitators and protesters against ICE enforcement in U.S. cities. The legal battles continued to move on multiple fronts, and that's the expectation. And while the hundreds of National Guard troops are already in Illinois, U.S. District Judge Amy Perry stopped their deployment. She said she found federal officials' assertions about coordinated violence by protesters unreliable. And we've seen the stories and the headlines come out of the Department of Homeland Security, where Kristi Noem has been pretty vocal about the increased attacks that she's seen on federal law enforcement enforcing immigration law. And she said that that's an ongoing issue, especially in states and jurisdictions that have migrant sanctuary policies. Here is Kristi Noem yesterday down in Florida, but she mentions Illinois and Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Administration.
And so can you also talk about the communication between ICE and local law enforcement agents that...
We would love to have local law enforcement across the country participating with us. Many times that's not true. Here in Sarasota, it's been fantastic. Here in Florida, it's been amazing. But you go into other communities and other states, and many times those governors are political. Those leaders in those towns, Portland's a great example of the mayor who chooses to play politics instead of keeping his citizens safe. Governor Pritzker in Illinois is putting his people in danger every day by going against us and not working with us to make sure that we're detaining individuals who have criminal charges against them or have been convicted and then re-releasing them out on the streets. We're starting to see better partnership out of some law enforcement officers who recognize that their citizens feel differently than their political leaders. Their citizens recognize that they want their streets safer. We saw that in Washington, D.C., that people that experience the freedom of being able to walk down a street, go to a restaurant again, be able to, conduct normal life and let their kids play in a playground, they enjoyed it, and they let their political leaders know that, and they've cooperated with us more. We continue to have targeted operations in many, many cities, but also very focused on those where challenges are still remaining, such as Portland, Chicago. We're in Memphis as well. We're going into San Francisco at the direction of the president as well. We're going to continue to make sure we're focused not just in those cities that we hear about on the news, but also cities like Sarasota, that we make sure that law enforcement officers in every single community get the chance to continue to get these criminals off of their streets.
So again, that's Kristi Noem yesterday down in Florida talking about the need for continued federal efforts in protecting law enforcement officers, especially in migrant sanctuary jurisdictions. And will the U.S. Supreme Court act on the Trump administration's emergency motion before the temporary restraining order that was issued Thursday before last? So we're coming up on that 2-week window this Thursday of the temporary restraining order being lifted. Here we are Tuesday morning. We'll see where this goes in the U.S. Supreme Court and whether or not President Donald Trump's going to be able to deploy the National Guard to Illinois. Be sure to get to thecentersquare.com and get the newsletter in your inbox so you can stay up to date, but also you can wake up with us here each and every weekday morning for more Illinois in Focus Daily.